Hi, my name is Scott Turansky, and this is Joanne Miller, and we represent the National Center for Biblical Parenting. We love doing these webinars because it gives us an opportunity to touch base with people in a very specific way. We know that every family is unique and different, and so reading a book sometime about parenting or listening to a CD offers good advice and ideas, but sometimes we need a little more guidance as we try to apply those tools and strategies that are out there to our own families. And so in this particular webinar, we're going to look at one family first. We're going to try to address a particular issue in that family and offer some solutions that fit into that family. So we're going to listen to the family's problems and issues and uniqueness, and then we're going to offer some practical ideas to move from where they are to where they need to be. So today we have with us Cheryl, and so I'm going to unmute Cheryl, and we're going to learn a little bit more about this situation. Cheryl, I'm going to ask you a question first of all. I want to know who lives in your home. I don't need to know if we're protecting the privacy of your children, because this will be aired in a webinar in a library for forever. They'll be able to listen to it themselves someday. But so we don't have to use their names. But I would like to know the ages and genders of your children, and if there is a husband living in your home as well.
Yes, my husband and I are married, live in the same home, and we have two boys, age 8 and 6.
Okay. All right. Why don't you tell me what's going on and how we can help you?
The reason that I asked for this conference was because we do have competition among the brothers, but it really stems from our 8-year-old, where he has a very competitive nature, and the 6-year-old really does not. And he only gets competitive really when the 8-year-old prods him, and it's really after time and time and time. He doesn't even take the bite after the first prodding. But it can be something like they'll be standing at the edge of the pool, and the 8-year-old will say, "I'm a better swimmer than you, let's race, go." And he'll beat him, of course, across the pool, and he'll say, "See, I told you I'm a better swimmer than you." Or, "I can write cursive and you can't." Well, of course, because the younger one's in 4K and the older one's in 2nd grade. And it doesn't necessarily have to be when the older one has friends around, although that behavior does increase when he has peers around in his age group. It can be just sitting around in the morning watching cartoons, or when we play a game and that behavior emerges for no reason. So it can be totally in an unprovoked atmosphere.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful. Let me ask you some more questions about your 8-year-old. Do your 8-year-old and your 6-year-old, do they share a room?
They do not.
Okay, so he has his own room. And are either of these children adopted?
No.
Okay. Tell me more about your 8-year-old. I just want to focus on him just for a moment. I want to get to know him a little bit. Does he, in the morning when he wakes up, does he wake up with energy or more calm? How does he handle his early morning time when he first gets up?
He typically wakes up on his own. We don't usually need to wake him up for
Okay.
school.
All right.
Most of the time he wakes up on his own. And he is a slow starter. He doesn't typically like to eat breakfast first thing in the morning. But when he is keyed in on something, for instance, he had gotten a new DS game, he will wake up with a purpose, come down, and hit that DS game first thing in the morning. And so he has a laser focus on whatever it is that he has an interest in. So, he can literally roll out of bed at 7 o'clock, 7:02, be playing that DS game with just vigor around what it is he wants to accomplish.
Okay. How does he do?
On days that he doesn't have that laser focus, he can lay around and just watch TV and let the morning unfold.
Okay. And you said that he's in 2nd grade. What kind of schooling option is he in? Public school, private school, or homeschool?
He's in a private Christian school.
Private Christian school. And how's he doing in school?
Very well. All A's and satisfactory.
All right. Does he have any hobbies that he likes to be involved in besides his video game?
Yes, he is very interested in baseball, and he's on swim team right now. You know, he's just at that age, frankly, where he's dabbling a little bit in everything. He hasn't grasped onto one thing that's become his passion. But right now it is baseball and swimming.
Is he a good athlete?
No. I think he's really passionate about what he does, and he's learning to be his best physically, but I don't think that he's one of those, you know, God-given natural athletes. We work hard with him in the sport that he's in to do the best that he can.
All right. But he does well at school. What kind of, if I were to ask him what his favorite subject is at school, would he say he gravitates more toward the reading, English side or the math science side?
I asked him that at the end of school, and he said reading.
Okay, so he really likes reading.
Now, his grades would say that he is really strong in math, but when I asked him at the end of school, he said reading.
All right, how does he do at school? You told me he does well with his grades. How does he do socially at school?
That is interesting because he likes to be the center of attention. He strives to be the class clown. So in first grade and second grade, that has meant that he has had to sit in the front of the room so the teacher can keep an eye on him, and it's a small classroom. But that his goal is to be known throughout the school as, you know, the guy who gets the high fives and, you know, walking down the hall and blah, blah, blah. But, well, I believe that the kids do know his name. I don't think that they see him as the big man on campus. I think in his mind, he sees himself as that or emerging as that. But I've been in a couple of situations recently where the two second grades have been together at a conference, for instance, and they had a chance to go around and get each other's signatures. And so I thought, well, I'm going to see if the kids, you know, sort of swell him to get his signature. And that didn't happen. So I think he's well liked, but I don't think he is as popular with the kids as he'd like to think he is. Again, I think he's well liked, but, you know, I don't think that he is, you know, BMOC.
All right. So it sounds like he's a guy searching for some security or some confidence or acceptance.
He really wants notoriety. He wants to sort of be a celebrity within the school. He wants to be known for his quick wit. He wants to be, the principal has her grandson there, and he believes that grandson gets some deferential treatment, which I have not seen, and none of the teachers have seen, none of the parents have seen. But he would love to have that notoriety as being the grandson of the principal. Of course, that's not going to happen. So he is now trying to figure out how to get his own notoriety. And so in his mind, that is by his comic wit, by being known as, you know, the guy who everybody knows. You know, he walks down the hallway and people go, hey, that's Colin, he's the cool kid, blah, 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 blah. Even to the point where he had to write an essay, and the essay that he wrote in his head wasn't good enough. He had to make it so funny that the kids would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And, you know, he's just not that funny. So, but that's what he yearned for, and he wouldn't put pen to paper until he decided that he came up with something so funny that the kids would roll out of their chairs laughing.
Okay. How does, he is in a room that he has to his own. He doesn't share the room with anyone. Does he keep his room clean, messy?
No, he keeps it clean.
All right. So and he does that on his own. He's self-motivated to keep his room clean.
Well, he's not in there very much. So, I mean, he sleeps in there, but, I mean, we pretty much live on the first floor, and we sleep on the second floor. So
Okay.
when he is in there, no, it's not self-motivated. He tears off his clothes. He leaves them wherever he takes them off. If he rips a tag off a new shirt, he throws it on the floor. So, no, it is not clean by his own design.
Okay. All right. Um, okay, so here's what we're doing. What I'm trying to do in my own mind as I'm thinking through your situation is I'm trying to imagine where your 8-year-old is now, which seems to be rather self-absorbed, relying heavily on other people's opinions of him, comparing himself to other people in order to feel better, a sense of competition with his brother, but probably with others in life, so that he has this sense that he's good or valued or something along that line. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, if that's where he is now, and we ask the question where we want him to be, we want him to be a person who has some other qualities. And I think there are going to be a list of them that we're thinking about that we want him to develop that will help balance out his need to please other people or perform in a way that gets other people to like him. I think we want to move to some things that we call one is we're going to develop some compassion, which is thinking about other people, not just about myself. Another's integrity, which is having some sense of moral character on the inside that is more than just what I look like on the outside. It's something that I'm building on the inside to really be a person of worth and value. That's what integrity is. Integrity has two components. One is that I'm honest with what I am on the outside and inside. The two are true to each other, but also there's a sense of moral character on the inside that makes him valuable for that reason. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do now at 8 years old is we're trying to move him to a place where he is now valuing himself for some other reasons than a opinion poll or popularity contest, or because he was able to run faster than his brother. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing we want to do is identify what those things are for him. And so I would suggest that one of the things we're going to do with him is have a conversation, and this may be a conversation just with him, or it could be a devotion that you have around the table where we're talking about what makes a person valuable. And so I don't think he's thinking rightly. Obviously, he's not thinking rightly about this concept. But I wonder if he's even knows that there's other ways to value a person than to perform in a certain way. If a person's performing in a particular way, but they don't have the internal character, is that person really as valuable as they think they are? And so what makes a person valuable? That's such a really important quality. It always is going to come back to character. Character of being able to sacrifice your own desires for someone else. So if we can teach him, for example, at school to be a servant, and we can ask him what random act of kindness did you do today to try to help someone else, even if you don't get noticed. Or let's try to do some anonymous giving or some anonymous acts of kindness. And maybe even do that as a family. Let's make some cookies.
It's funny.
Go ahead.
It's funny you say that because, recently with all the hurricanes and or tornadoes, in Alabama, we've been doing a lot of giving and volunteering, etc. And my husband and I recently went on a site, and we came back, and he said to me, "Mama, you do a lot of volunteering and you do a lot of giving. Why do you do that so much? I mean, why do you even bother to serve and volunteer so much?"
Yeah. Good. The
and
question.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, because the question
because
itself.
we talk about it all the time, and I was like, wow, where have you been?
This reveals
You
a real a lack of development in his own heart. So what we're seeing is an area where he is, for whatever reason, we don't know quite why, but he's not on a developmental level, so to speak. We were looking at a growth chart about integrity and evaluating yourself, if there was such a thing. He's not up to where he needs to be. He's still back somewhere in the preschool level, about wanting to be noticed and valuing himself based on performance, instead of where he could be, and that is valuing himself based on some things that have to do with his internal character. So I would like to see this approach on a couple different levels. One is, I think we have to deal with the behavior. So let's go right back there and let's discipline him for some of the things we're seeing. And I would list, here are the things I'm seeing that are a problem. And that is when you say something to your brother that says, I can beat you to the other side, when you draw attention to the fact that you're bigger, stronger than he is, okay, and you're going to beat him in some way to prove yourself, as soon as you say you're going to do that, I'm going to pull you out. Okay, so I'm going to discipline you when that happens, because that illustrates a wrong value system. It shows me that you're using the wrong ruler to measure your success. So you might even do this activity with him. Create a ruler on a piece of paper that isn't 6 inches, but it's really 7 inches, but it's marked out like a 6-inch ruler, okay? And so you give him the ruler and you say, okay, here, what I'd like you to do is draw me a triangle that has 3-inch sides. So 3 inches on each of 3 sides, draw me a triangle. And he does, and you go, nope, that's the wrong thing. What? I did it. No. And we have him do a couple more things, a square or a rectangle, whatever we want to have him draw. And we say, nope, that wasn't right either. And so he's puzzled, and we say, well, the reason it isn't right is because you've got the wrong standard, you've got the wrong measurement. So he might benefit from that kind of an activity. We're saying, what measurement do we use to evaluate a person's value? Because some people think, and I wouldn't even point it at him, I think some people think that you're valuable if other people clap when you sing a song, or some people think that you're valuable if other people laugh when you tell a joke. Is that what makes a person valuable? What makes a person really valuable? I'll tell you what does. It's the person who goes out and helps the neighbors, when the tornado comes through, that's the person who's really valuable, because they've got something inside their hearts. Now, if we can draw some Bible stories into this, I think it'll be helpful to talk about someone who has something that's valuable on the inside. Someone like Joseph, for example, who, he didn't get any recognition when he was in the prison, but he had something valuable on the inside, and eventually then God used him in some great ways. It's not because of some performance, it's because of something in his heart that he had. Or I don't know, maybe I can think of some other Bible stories as we're going through here. But I think looking at the heart qualities, what are we looking at that really makes a person valuable? And then I think you're going to have to list those. And I'd get a group of character qualities that you might want to use for a while. Schools sometimes gravitate toward 5 or 6 different qualities. The Army has 5. There are 5 core qualities. I don't even know if I can remember what they are, but I know one of them's honor. Remember when we were doing our honor work. But if we take, responsiveness to authority, honor, cooperation, compassion, we take those qualities and we say, okay, now we're going to know how well you're doing today. How did you do in those 5 areas? And we start asking questions about those things. That becomes our other line of defense. So on the one hand, we're disciplining every time we see him doing something that contributes to competition and comparison. We're going to call him out, and we're going to say, well, we got to talk about this. I'm sorry, we're going to have to wait. Your brother's going to have to go first, and then you can go, because we're not going to measure your worth based on your ability to work with him. We're going to let him go first. Or you can go first, and then you're going to come over here and sit down while he goes. But I can't have you both going at the same time, because you're measuring your worth based on your brother and his performance. And that's not the right measurement. So we're going to deal with behavior, and then we're also going to deal with a new definition for him of what character really is. What makes a person valuable? I think it'd be fun to talk about the passages that talk about when Jesus talked about the Pharisees. They looked good on the outside. They wanted people to praise them. And when they prayed in the synagogue, they did it a certain way. So all those verses about the Pharisees in the Bible who, what does the Bible say? That they put tassels on their garments and they have lengthy phylacteries around their arms so that they'll be noticed by men. And that's the mistake. And so Jesus is saying those guys are doing the wrong thing. And so your discussions with him, not just saying, hey, look at these guys, you're being like a Pharisee. No, we're saying, let's learn from this story what makes a person valuable. What was Jesus trying to say to his disciples about what makes a person valuable? Why do you think Jesus got up from the meal and washed all the disciples' feet? What was he trying to teach us? Because then he tells us to do the same thing. Do you understand what I'm trying to do here?
Yep, I do.
How do you think he'll respond to that?
Well, I think Colin is really good at being in the moment and really good at giving me the right answer and sometimes a very insightful answer.
Okay.
But it's the answer to stick and learn from that I haven't seen happen.
Okay.
And we have learned lessons repeatedly, so he will sit down, we'll have a conversation, and he will be ready with the answer because we've had a conversation. So, the trick is for him to really, for it to sink in and become a lesson learned, because he's really good at parroting back what I want to hear.
Yes.
He's a really intellectual child. That's
Good.
where the A's come, and
Yeah.
so he's really good at saying, okay, I know this is what they want to hear, and I know, he can follow the logic of it. It's turning the logic into the emotion, into the learning.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the information. We may give him definitions of character and definitions of integrity, and we may use logic to help him understand it. But then we got to take that to the next level and give him a practical experience to work it through. It's a practical experience of taking him on a trip to pick up trash and so on from a tornado that's going to test him a little bit, and then to come back and say, wow, that is a person of character, someone who can do that. And nobody even knows we did. Or taking some anonymous, giving an anonymous financial gift to someone who needs it, but not sharing that information with that person, or making some cookies and dropping them off at the neighbor, or just picking up trash around the neighborhood that nobody acknowledges that they're grateful for it. We're not getting applause for this because the Bible says, when you get applause from men, well, that is your reward, he says.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to help him understand. So do you have a computer in front of you?
I do.
Can you see what I'm drawing?
Hold on. Hey, Joe, will you help me with this? 1 second. Do we go to the online meeting?
I have no idea. Do you know what they should do, Andy?
Oh, hold on.
To see what I'm drawing? Can you see me on the picture?
No.
Oh, you're not even looking at me.
She's just a caller.
Oh, you're just a caller. That's why. Okay. I'm sorry. That's all right. Let me say that sometimes children need us to go over a piece of truth over and over again. And it's kind of like a flower. And we cross that point where the truth is a number of different times. So over and over again, we're going to hit that truth. And we have to do it from a lot of different levels. So kids often don't learn as fast as we would like, but even adults don't learn as fast as we would like sometimes, that we have to cross the same piece of truth a number of times, and it's kind of like this flower going over and over it because we're trying to communicate a piece of information and it's just not getting through. So we come back another way and we try to communicate it a different way, and we're going back and forth here over that same piece of truth a number of times, but we're hitting it from different perspectives. So one time you're using logic, another time you're using a parable or a story, another time you're using a Bible verse, another time you're using an actual experience a child's going through. And the more you do that, the more you get involved in those things, the more your child's able to grasp this idea because he's passed over that same truth a number of times. So in this case, we know what your son needs to learn. We know that he has a lie that he's believing right now, that his self-worth is based on his performance. That's what he believes. Okay, and all of the stories you told us about what he likes to do at school or how he likes to handle himself in different situations, all of those things that he that you said, the way he tries to compete with his brothers, that's all performance-based value. We don't value a person based on performance. At least God doesn't. And in fact, although there's performance-based models in our world, the person who has real value is the person who demonstrates integrity. The person who that we honor at certain times is a person who's not just done some good thing where they get an applause for it. It's someone who's done something that demonstrates character. That's why they get a medal or some sense of honor in their lives, or they're recognized with an award of some kind because of some character issue in their lives. Connor, what are you trying to work on in your life? That's what I would say. What is God trying to help you develop in your own heart? And that's where things like humility come into play. And so that's why we're teaching. We're doing a lot of work over on this area, and then we're disciplining him. I don't want to minimize the importance of discipline here and correction, because that correction is going to be an important part of what's happening for him. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I can see you now.
You can see my flower that I drew?
I can.
Yeah.
What level of correction is appropriate? So I obviously, for the competition and comparison, I don't let them do the activity together. We have conversations about what makes the person valuable. He's an experiential learner. So for the things that I'm trying to teach, I try to find those experiential experiences so he, learns it. But what if that's not hitting?
All right, so let's use some correction strategies, because I do think you want to call him out on this whenever you, I don't want to say whenever you see it, but whenever you think it's appropriate when you see it, I would call him out. And the first thing you're going to do is make observations. I would suggest that sometimes our confrontation is simply just making observations. Well, that was valuing yourself based on performance, just like that, and then walk away. Because we're trying to communicate a message. But also you want to talk about point B, that is the point at which you're trying to move him toward. Remember, a real sense of value is when you have character. So I'll give you a simple illustration about when I was working on this with my grandchildren, and I'm going to come back to your question about correction. My grandson, Hudson, and Hayden. Hudson's 6, Hayden's 4. I bring them Beanie Babies, a bunch of Beanie Babies that I gave to them, and they're using them as bean bags to throw into the trash can and see who can get them all in the trash can that's 10 feet away. But Hudson's saying, oh, I got mine in, you didn't. And he's saying, oh, you got yours in, but you were over the line. That doesn't count. And then they run to get him, and oh, I got here first. And so I'm seeing all of this happen, and I'm feeling like this is a problem between brothers, and this is not good for Hudson to be doing this. And so I said to him, Hudson, you know what the Bible says about the person who's a winner? The Bible says the person who's first is the person who's willing to be last. So here's what I want you to do. When your brother throws a beanbag and he doesn't get it in, I want you to say, oh, almost, Hayden. Okay, let's practice that. Go ahead, Hayden, you throw it. Okay, Hudson, you say it. Oh, almost, Hayden. Good, that's good. Now, when you run over there, I think maybe you should run over there, but let Hayden get it sometimes, because then you'll be the winner. Because what I'm trying to teach him is that there's some internal satisfaction and benefit that you receive inside your heart when you are being kind, not just when you're getting there first. That you're really the winner when you're developing this sense of compassion, making somebody else feel good. So what I tried to do was I took what was a difficult situation and I turned it into something that I could use for a positive thing, and then we practiced it. So when I say we practiced, we continued to play the game. And then he started picking it up himself and saying to him, Hayden, you got it in, good job. And then looked at me for what I would say about that. And I said to him, you are a winner, Hudson. And so what I'm trying to do is encourage him to have a different view of his understanding of what it means to value himself. Does that make sense?
It does.
But when you come to correction, I would make observations. I would call him out. I don't think you always have to say, okay, look, I'm going to take away a privilege from you or something like that. I would say, look, I'd call him out. Just calling him out sometimes, say, wait, you're making a mistake there. I see you're valuing based on performance, and you need to value based on character. I want you to think about it. Tell me what character you're going to demonstrate and how you're going to do it before you go back in and swim. Give me an idea of what you're going to do. So he's got to take it through his own heart. He's got to come up with an idea of what character looks like in practical terms before he can go forward. And we're going to help him brainstorm like that on a number of occasions before he's over a period of time in order to facilitate this. Does that make sense?
It does.
So your correction is designed to be on a very positive level. Now here's the deal, okay? We can't force a child to change, but we can set the parameters. We can create the container for a child, and that's what we're doing here. Whenever we're trying to correct children and work with them, we're creating a container that says this is the right way to live, and I'm going to fill that out as many ways and possibilities as I can with practical experience in teaching and Bible stories and examples from the newspaper and whatever, and we're going to build that container so you understand what integrity is all about. I can't force you to go there, but I'm going to help you see what it is. And then we pray that God will change his heart so that God will breathe life into the container, that he'll start taking it on as his own. And that's what eventually happens. And we see kids, like with Hudson in that short example, where he starts doing something that's kind in that moment that came from his own heart. And that's the breath of God working inside of his heart in order to move him forward. That's what we're praying for your son in order to help him move forward. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, here's what I would do with your 6-year-old, because I think I might even start with your 6-year-old, not your 8-year-old. I'd go to your 6-year-old and say, look, I feel bad for you sometimes when your 8-year-old brother tries to compete with you and draw you into some kind of a competition. I know you don't like to do that, right? So I want to give you a plan for when he wants to do that. Okay? When he wants to compete and say, I'm better than you, or one, you can ignore it. 2, don't join the race. Okay? You don't have to be involved in that. He's just doing that to try to beat you so he can feel good about it. You don't have to do that. You want to have enough confidence in your own self, because obviously you know this, that's why you don't compete with him a lot, I guess, is that you're good no matter what happens, right? You've got some good things going on in your heart that make you valuable. They don't have to mean racing to the other side of the pool. So what I want to do is try to pull your second son out of the competition as much as possible, because we're going to use a multifaceted approach here with your older son to try to help him to make some changes. Does your older son...
And we do that.
I'm sorry?
We do that with our younger son, and that works most of the time.
Good.
Yeah, he's very grounded, actually, and he doesn't cave too much, so...
That's good.
I don't have a lot of worries there.
Good, and I would affirm him for that. That just means that his sense of confidence doesn't come from performance, and that's a real healthy response that is really something your older son can learn from. I don't want to compare them in that, but there are some times when if your younger son is doing something and he feels good about it even though he lost or something like that, and say, your son's doing pretty well. I mean, your brother's doing pretty well, isn't he? He seems to be okay, even the fact that he lost that. He must value himself on something other than performance, and that's a sign of being healthy and mature. Does your older son like to play games?
He does.
Do you beat him?
I do.
And how does he respond?
Not well.
Oh, man.
I would say that we have worked on his response.
Good.
In first grade, we worked on his response a lot, to the point where now he takes it very well.
That's
he
good.
used to flip over the board and throw a tantrum, but now,
Yes.
for the most part, he responds really well, unless he happens to be in the mood. But he congratulates me and says we'll play again, and
Good.
but I purposely play to win so I can help
Yes.
him with his response.
Oh, I understand that. I think that's great. I would say that beating him regularly and enjoying the game is good, and letting him win every once in a while is also helpful to keep him interested in the game. Hey, I'm just repeating things.
Oh, trust me, he's a smart cookie. He does win on his own, but I want to make sure that he doesn't throw a fit with other kids, and I'm very pleased now how he handles himself when he plays the game competitively.
Okay, so that's really important in that moment to affirm the way he's thinking about the game. He lost the game, yet he's not having a temper tantrum or being upset. He's saying something to himself in that moment that allows him to go on without losing it. I want to know what he's saying. It'd be great to interview him, and not that I need to interview him, but you interview him and say to him, I want to know something. It used to be that you'd get upset when you lose a game. Now you don't. and you're able to continue on and play even when you lose. What do you say to yourself in those moments? Because probably I would guess that some of the things he's saying to himself in those moments are healthy things, and we want him to be able to respond in some real positive ways in regards to that. So I think that draws attention to something that's pretty important.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to open the phone lines for a moment and see if someone else has a question or comment about your situation or even their situation. Maybe they'd like to ask a question about sibling conflict or about competition between brothers and sisters, and so we'll allow other people to respond for a moment, and then we can come back. Would you can mute that one, and you get somebody else?
Yeah, Wanda has a question.
Hold on. Okay, Wanda, you're on. What do you got?
Yeah, me again. Hi. Yeah, this time Anthony with his Anthony 7. Luke will be 4 in August. He's still 3. His comments aren't directly like the guest speaker where he's purposely always challenging Luke physically to perform, but he'll make comments with Luke in the room as, Luke, if Luke says something and it doesn't sound right, Luke, it doesn't go that way. Or he'll tell me, he doesn't know what he's saying, Mom. Or we're in the car and I'm so happy because Luke, he could do his buckle, but then he can't actually fit it in the buckle himself. So Anthony will say, but it's so easy. Why can't he do it? He's not saying it directly to Luke, but he's still putting him down to me.
Yeah, you know, it disheartens me too sometimes when I hear parents who do the same thing in front of their kids. They'll be telling me the story about how bad their kid is when the kid's standing right there. And I'm going, this makes me feel really uncomfortable, and I'll try to change the subject, or I'll even direct my conversation to the child. And so I understand that can be really frustrating when a child does that to another child. So, and I think you're right to want to correct him because Anthony's wrong. And Anthony's doing the wrong thing. So what we need to do is help Anthony make some changes. Anthony needs to think of encouraging things to say. And so if he can't do that, then he needs to be quiet. Those are really his only two choices. And so we're saying, Anthony, you need to stop. So I wouldn't even dialogue with Anthony. When Anthony starts saying something like that, I say, whoa, Anthony, wrong comment. I want you to think about it. And I want you to come up with something encouraging. I want you to be quiet. Those are your two choices. So we're being pretty firm with Anthony at this point because it sounds to me like Anthony has a similar problem and that he somehow is drawing attention to the weaknesses of his little brother, and maybe that makes him feel like he knows more or has more skills than his brother has or whatever. So we're going to set some pretty strong limits on him in order to move forward. Does that make sense, Wanda?
Absolutely, yes.
I would definitely, I'd be pretty firm, but don't feel like you have to engage him in dialogue at that point. But you might just say, well, that was not very encouraging, Anthony. I'd like you to think about it. Think of something kind to say. And then you might model it by saying, Lucas, I really like what you did, that you're able to fit it into the buckle. Now, you're getting pretty big. That's pretty good. You're growing up here. And so you're modeling encouraging words for Anthony that may be helpful here. But in our family, we encourage each other. That's what we do. We don't focus on people's weaknesses. We help people in their weaknesses, but we focus on their strengths. It's one of the signs of a strong family is where we focus.
I tell Anthony these things, and I do say, we don't say those. You're going to be quiet if you can't be kind. And I even bring Jesus. Did Jesus ever put down? But it still lingers around. So I wonder if there's something else could I do if he's not getting it?
Okay, so then, again, one of the tools for correction is that we have children practice doing the right thing, and that's where I'd really go here. I mean, we could discipline him in some other ways because he's doing the wrong thing. We might raise the motivation level a bit with some other form of correction, but I would typically say, look, son, it looks to me like you have a problem thinking of negative things and not controlling your mouth sometimes and saying negative things that are, they're not really mean, but they're discouraging to people. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of 3 kind things you can say to your brother or someone else in this family before you're free to go. And that becomes the discipline that we use.
Okay.
So we're practicing doing the right thing. It sounds like he has a self-control problem too. It's one thing to see something that's negative, because we all see negative things around us, but the person who always feels like they have to bring out that negative thing ends up with some significant, it just makes them look bad too. It's just not in a nutritious environment. I like the words nutritious and toxic, and so describing those words to a child and then helping them see that there are words that can be nutritious and toxic is also helpful. Okay?
Okay,
Oh,
Scott, we have
wonderful.
another
Thank you.
question.
Sure, Wanda.
Stephanie has a question.
Okay. Stephanie, what do you got?
Well, actually, I'm learning a lot from both the other callers' situations, but I thought I'd list a little bit more what mine is.
Okay.
It sounds like mine might be a little more intense. We've definitely got the competition and an excuse if the older child doesn't actually win. There's always some very good reason. We've also got chronic criticism, like she has a very critical spirit toward her brother, and then always has to outdo, whether it's say her brother had a good baseball game, well, she has to point out her good softball game, and then definitely a desire to tattle, point out any faults that she sees in her brother, and even just jump into a situation if I might be providing some correction, like it should be more correction, or it was worse than you saw. So it's pretty intense, and it's definitely a daily struggle, and it's a 12-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy.
Okay.
Using a lot of strong tones, and then extremism, like never, always, he always does this, he never does that.
Yeah, you got a pretty difficult situation here on your hands. And
Yes.
so, okay, so here's what we've got to do. Stephanie, are you in front of a computer?
I am.
All right. Let's see. How can I do this? There we go. All right, you're at point A. And I would say that your 12-year-old daughter is very self-focused. Okay, she is tends to be selfish in this one area. I'm not sure that's true about all of her life, but in this area, she's selfish, and she's negative. She doesn't take responsibility for her own actions, right? Okay, those are the
Right.
different things we have at point A. What we're trying to do is get over here to point B. We have to define this for her and help her understand what this looks like. So we can do a lot of different things here to go to, and we're probably going to start with one, and in 2 weeks we're going to move to another, and so on. But let's just take one quality, the quality of honor. And we're going to define honor for her this way. We would say that honor is treating people as special, doing more than what's expected, and having a good attitude. Let's just use that definition. That's the definition out of our honor book, so that's why I'm throwing that out there. Okay, honor. That's what honor is. And we have a rule. One of the rules, or when I say rules, I mean the governing principles that makes our family work, is that we show honor to each other. And so I'm going to be looking for ways that you can show honor, and I want you to be looking for ways too. So you're on a mission to be showing honor. Today is school's out. I don't know when school's out for you, but school's going to be out soon. And every day you're going to be looking for ways to honor. And I'm going to be calling, and if she has a real problem with negativity and selfishness and being self-absorbed, I tend to call her out every hour and say, look, I'd like you to think of a way now. It's 11 o'clock. What is an honor activity you can do now? It doesn't have to be that big. You can just go over and say something nice to your brother. Okay, and when I'm seeing dishonoring things, then I'm going to discipline you. Because we don't have dishonor in our family. We are a team. We work together. We encourage each other. And so we're going to move now from point A to point B. This is a diagram that you draw for her. I don't know if you write all these negative things over here. But we're saying, I think you have a problem. You focus on yourself, or you're negative, and we're going to move toward honor, or you're critical, or whatever you want to use. And we're going to move toward honor in our life. Okay, I'm going to help you do that. Now, let's define honor. Let's look for ways that we can honor, because honor is a fun thing you can develop in family life and in a child's life. So we're saying, what can we do? So we're bringing her on board. We're getting her involved in the process of how we're going to be honoring, and then we're going to discipline her. So we got all these things going on at the same time. Number one, we've got firmness. That's your discipline that says, whoop, sorry, you're over here. You're out of here. You're not going to be able to play. You're out of the water. Okay, you're in the pool. You're out. You're sitting over here until you can think of a way to be kind. Cold or not, you're sitting out here on the cement until you can think of a way that you can demonstrate some kindness, because we can't do what you just did, which is dishonoring. We don't do that in our family. So I'm suggesting here that you're being very firm, that you're using some correction in the process, but we also have to teach her, okay, what this looks like to be more honoring. When you're tempted to say something negative when people are being negative, the world around us is a negative place. When you're tempted to say something negative, what do you do instead to show honor? What does it look like? So we're going to teach her, because she has a hard time overcoming her temptations, okay? Then we're going to be over here at this point, we're going to vision. Visioning is when we say, boy, let me tell you how this is going to help you. If you can develop honor in your life at 12 years old, this is going to be one of the success principles that will guide you through the whole teenage years. If I can help you with this, this is going to help you forever. You're going to be a great employee someday. You're going to be a great mom someday. You're going to be a great wife someday. You're going to be a great coach maybe someday, because you know how to honor. And so I'm going to help you do that. We're going to practice that here in our family. Every day, we're going to get together and we're going to pray for honor to develop in our home. And I pray with her and say, Lord, I pray that you'd help us to be honoring in order to be the kind of people that you want us to be. And then also what we're going to do here is we're going to coach her to move from point A to point B. That's the fifth thing here. So I've given you 5 different words to add to your plan. Firmness, coaching, praying, teaching, and visioning. Because you got a difficult problem with this 12-year-old. She doesn't get it. She's not getting it, and she's developed some real negative patterns over time that are getting bigger and bigger and worse, and we've got to cut into that and change the dialogue that's going on in her head. It's likely not going to happen at this stage at 12 years old with you just making a couple of comments here or there or telling her about the honor definition. It's going to have to come through some really clear firmness on your part. It's going to come with some clear correction when you're going to say, we're not going to allow this to happen. But we don't want to just be negative here. We're also going to communicate vision, and we're going to coach her along in order to move forward. So when you make this I would encourage you. I mean, here we got the summer that you're going to be able to focus now for the next 3 months. Children tend to have a lighter school schedule, even if they have school during that time. But you're going to have an opportunity now to focus on something. I'd choose the summer to focus on something. And if honor is what you're going to focus on with your daughter, I'd do it. Does that make sense?
It does. And may I add another comment
Sure,
about kind of
please.
an element that's included? There's a family member a couple generations up from her that has this temperament to an extreme degree and would be considered mentally ill. I'm not convinced that the issues are all something that can be handled with medication, but I would take these characteristics and amplify them extremely. And so there's always kind of that cloud hanging, like, is this the issue we have here? And
so you're afraid that this might be some bigger issue?
Well, I'm afraid that it could develop into it if we don't intervene, and I just haven't had as much success intervening yet, so that's why I'm talking to you, for example.
All right, so here's the thing, all right? Can I just have the board here for a minute? All right, I want to just address your concern, okay, because it's a valid concern, and I want to just tell you there are 3 different causes for any problem that a child or adult is experiencing in life. You have to understand that. 3 different causes. One is biological, and that's what you're talking about now. I was giving you more solutions on a reactive. Reactive is how we respond to life situations, okay? And the third is spiritual. Those are 3 different causes to any problem that anybody has in life. So a child, let's take depression for a moment. Depression can be caused by biological issues. A child doesn't, or a person doesn't eat, they feel depressed, or they don't sleep, they feel depressed. So that's just a biological issue. They could be reacting to something in life. They lose a loved one or a family pet or something happens there. They can react to life situations. Or it may be a spiritual issue. If there's somebody holding sin in their life and harboring resentment against somebody, that's a spiritual issue, as we know in Scripture, and it causes a person to have some internal difficulties or depression. Now, I was giving you solutions here. Okay, and often I combine reactive and spiritual solutions because I think that God provides a lot of solutions in His Word that help us to address issues. You're suspecting there might be a biological issue that is a brain issue, a systemic issue, which even could be a personality issue. This person is made up. They're more of a melancholy person that tends to see things negative and so on, okay? And that could be. What this tells us, if because you are aware of that, is that there now are 3 different buckets of solutions that we're going to use and we're going to draw upon for this situation. I don't care if we're talking about depression, attention deficit disorder, bipolar, or any other issue. You're considering some kind of a mental illness of some kind, okay, which is a biological issue. We don't know what that is. So you're going to be very aware of what's going on, because if you see symptoms of some kind of a mental illness, you're going to want to get intervention quickly from some medical professional, and she may be put on medication. I wouldn't hesitate to use that as part of the therapy if necessary. So even a child who's very depressed and upset because of a chemical imbalance, we may use some medication to help balance them out a bit. But we're not going to stop there and say, hey, the problem's there. We're going to use this one. We usually are using counseling. We're using support. When I say counseling, it doesn't mean professional counseling. It may mean discussing conversations with children. We're going to have support. We're going to have a lot of dialogue. We're going to develop practice sessions. We're going to work on patterns and so on here as reactions. Then we're going to tell a lot of Bible stories, and we're going to pray, and we're going to find spiritual resources over here that are going to contribute to this. So it's very important. If you suspect you've got something going on that's bigger than what we're talking about here, you want to try to define this as much as possible. Your point A here is going to be very specific. I want to know what word she says. I want to know what attitude she puts on. I would like to know, have a page or two about all the different scenarios and arenas this takes place. And then I'd want to know very specifically where we're going here, because now we're moving into a different category. I just want you to know that we help people with special needs, for example, let's say you take a family who has a child born into their home who has Down syndrome. Everything changes. There's no I think we have a problem here. We have a problem here, okay? The way the schedules change, we take that child to physical therapy, we take that child, we start getting that child medical help, we're doing blood tests continually, we're doing all of these things to help that child on a number of levels, and it changes life because there's more of an intensity. We know something's wrong. If you suspect something's wrong right there, we're going to start now treating this child as if this child has a special need of some kind, because she does, and it's being manifested in this area. Now, let's say that we're wrong. Let's say she doesn't have a mental illness of some kind. Well, great. What we've done is we've brought to bear all these solutions, and we're seeing signs of health, and she's moving forward in some positive ways, and we're doing well. And then things start to develop in some positive, and we're grateful. We're okay. And we thank the Lord that we've either averted a problem or we didn't have one in the first place. And we're grateful for that. But if we do have a problem, we're setting up the scene early, and we're preparing ourselves in order to move forward, in order to help this child for the long term. Does that make sense to you, Stephanie?
It does. So are you suggesting that I should probably take her in to have a professional evaluation just to eliminate that or address it? Would that be a good early step?
I don't know enough about your situation yet. I would not tend to do that yet. What I would tend to do is be very strategic in doing therapy with her for the next year. You doing therapy with her for the next year to try to change what you're seeing in this, is behavior here. We don't know what's causing it yet. Okay, but we're going to start working on some things, making some assumptions about her heart. We're going to draw from all of these things. So we're going to make sure she's getting a good night's sleep. That's over here in this biological area. Sleep, diet, exercise. Okay, we're going to be doing all of those things to help her. Maybe we're going to give her some vitamins, or all of the different things we're going to be doing. Those are all biological solutions. We're going to be putting those into practice here in order to help her. We're also going to be doing these other things to try to strategically move, and she's going to know it. And we're going to tell her from the beginning, these are the things I see when something is wrong, because this is not normal for someone to be experiencing these negative comments and reactive responses to situations. This is not normal, so I'm going to be helping you. You're 12 now. Okay, maybe if you were 5, some of this would be normal, but you're not 5, you're 12. So by 12, we should be getting over this. So I'm a little bit concerned here. I want you to know. So this is what we're going to be doing. And when we see this, we're going to take some pretty strong action. I don't mean we're yelling or something like that, but we're going to stop the process here, and because that means we've got a problem. And we're going to start moving. And so I want your help here. How can you be moving from point A to point B, okay? So we're going to get the child's help. That's a whole nother thing that we do, is help children develop a plan for themselves, and that might be helpful here too. But what I'm trying to do is give you the plan, and I'd be more inclined to work this plan given what you've told me so far. If there's some things you haven't told me that that cause you to believe that we need to see a doctor right away, by all means, you can't do anything wrong. Go see a doctor. But given what you've told me, I'd be more inclined to try a heart-based approach first, and then see if we see some progress. If we do, then we may be able to cope with this and deal with this in life without going down some of these other paths. Medication isn't bad, and we're not against medication. It just has side effects, especially when you're using with children, because if you're using it over a long period of time, it's just hard. It's hard on anybody's body. Then you're taking a second medication to cover the side effects of the first medication. It's just complicated. So I try to avoid that if I could, but I wouldn't be afraid to go there if necessary. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
All right. What we're trying to do here in this particular session is we're trying to talk about a child. Let's see. The problem we talked about today in Cheryl's situation is one that came about because she sees in the midst of sibling conflict. And often when we see a problem in sibling conflict, we'll take that out and we'll look at it because it's an indication of some weakness inside of a child's heart. And that's what's happening in a number of the cases we've looked at here. We're finding the child's weakness that's coming out in the temptation that happens in sibling conflict, and we're trying to help that child deal with it. Now, the good thing is sibling conflict or sibling relationships becomes the testing ground or the practice ground to move forward. So I would not be afraid to jump in and allow your children to continue to play, pull them out, work with them, send them back in, because that becomes the laboratory for good growth to take place. But first we have to develop a plan. We have to set the stage for character development, what it looks like in practical terms, and we send them back in order to make it work. So sibling conflict, yeah, we got a lot of ideas for it, but sometimes it's an indication that something's going wrong in a particular child, and we'll pull that child out to do some more specific therapy in that child's heart. And when I say therapy, I mean parents doing therapy with their children, because we believe that parents are the best therapists with their kids. So that's what we've tried to do here, a very specific situation. In fact, we were able to look at 2 or 3 different situations today to try to identify specific problems in kids' lives. Every family is unique, but oftentimes we can learn from the situations that other kids have as we try to apply that to our own families. I encourage you to look for more solutions on our website. If you'd like to listen to more of these webinars, we have a whole library of webinars. They're available if you become a member. And you can learn more about membership on our homepage at biblicalparenting.org. Also, you can take classes at biblicalparentinguniversity.com, and that will give you more opportunities to integrate some of the things that we're talking about. Lots of resources we have. We're very eager to help parents, and we hope that you will contact us again, that if you are interested in a webinar in your home, that you would give us a call, and we'll help you deal with some specific strategies for your kids. Thanks a lot, and have a great rest of the day.